Jacque Vaughn's coaching journey brings him back to Lawrence, maybe to one day take over for Bill Self.
Rock Chalk!
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your hosts. I'm Andy Patton. He is Isaac Shade, and you are joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. I want to thank all of you who have made this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Remind you that you can check out the show ad-free on Amazon Music. And of course, we got to give a special shout out to those everyday listeners and those of you who are hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord community. Today's episode of Locked On College Basketball is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money by using code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com, which gets you 50% off your first year. As a note, before we get into what we're talking about on today's show, we are recording this on Thursday as we are getting ready for our vacations over Memorial Day. We're both going to be out of town, so wanted to get this show out ahead of time. But we got some fun stuff to talk about. Jacque Vaughn, the former Kansas great, is joining Bill Self's staff. We'll talk about what that might mean, especially for Self, who's getting up there in age a little bit and had some health issues. This might be a sign of things to come in Lawrence. Speaking of Big 12 coaches, both Kelvin Sampson and Grant McCasland signed well-deserved contract extensions. We'll talk about that, and then we'll close out the show talking about some really fun non-conference basketball games, including some at Basketball Mecca, the Madison Square Garden. We'll get to that to close out the show. But Isaac, we got to start with the news. Jacque Vaughn hired as an assistant coach at the University of Kansas, where he starred in the early 1990s. He's the latest coach to return to coach at his alma mater, but the difference, many of those coaches are returning as head coaches and don't necessarily have a lot of prior head coaching experience, whereas Vaughn actually has been a head coach in the NBA level, as high as you can get. He's coached both the Nets and he coached the Nets and the Magic, right? Were the two teams that he coached. And now, after being an NBA head coach, he's returning to Lawrence to be an assistant under Coach Bill Self. It's a lot of intrigue about what this might mean for the future of this Kansas program, especially seeing Bill Self's team not be so great the last couple of years. And obviously he had some that heart issue a couple of years ago that took him out. Obviously he's returned and seems to be healthy right now, but it's starting to look like there's some writing on the wall here about what might be going on in Lawrence once Bill Self decides to hang him up. Is that kind of your read on this situation?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not like, we're going to talk about Kelvin Sampson in a little bit, where Houston has already said Kelvin Sampson is the coach in waiting. It's not like Creighton, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, where they've said Alan Huss is the coach in waiting. They've not come out and said this, like it was not, they had an official release about it and it was not part of that. But Andy, as you said, it seems like the writing is on the wall in a big way, right? Like you bring in a guy who is like a legend at Kansas. I mean, anytime you make a list of Kansas greats, and in particular Kansas great point guards, his name is not just somewhere on that list, right? Like it is at or near the top of every great Kansas player there's been. And so not just that, but then he goes off to the NBA and has had like a 15-year NBA coaching career, basically went straight from playing for the Spurs to being an assistant for the Spurs, and has been coaching at the NBA level every year other than the year that's wrapping up right now, right after he was fired by the Nets. And so, Andy, all that experience, all the history at his alma mater, this seems like a no-brainer to me to have him be, even if it's not publicly the coach in waiting, if that's what they're talking about behind the scenes, that just makes all the sense in the world to me. Especially, you mentioned some of this. Bill Self is 62 right now, which is not old. We're about to talk about a coach that got a 4-year extension and he's 69 right now.
Right.
So, but health issues play into that, right? Like his 62 might make him somebody else's 69, right? Just depending on how that health holds up. Let's remember, went 3 seasons ago, where he had those heart issues and literally couldn't coach in the NCAA tournament, Andy. And there was a lot of concern there. And Kansas has now had back-to-back not Kansas years.
Mhm.
And I think we've seen all these coaches of the older guard kind of be like, I don't know if this new version of college basketball is for me.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's a lot younger than the Jay Wrights and the Roy
Mhm.
Williams and the Coach K's. I think how old is Jay Wright? Am I short selling Jay
I was
Wright?
going to say Jay Wrights, I think, was in his mid-60s when he retired, so fairly similar age. Yeah.
Fair enough. But like he's younger than those guys,
Mhm.
but still, he could be like, I'm out. I'm
Mhm.
done. I want to take care of my health, be with my family. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it could. And also, Andy, it would make a ton of sense with the trend that we're seeing across college basketball.
Yeah.
By my count, this is the fourth NBA coach that we've seen come back and coach either at their alma mater or a school they're closely related to. Let me reel them off really quick, and I'll ask you something about that. The first one we saw was this time last year, Kevin Young, which wrapped up the coaching carousel that started with SMU and involved John Calipari. Kevin Young is not a BYU alum, but he is he's a Mormon. He's part of the LDS church, right? So that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Last role, he was the Suns' associate head coach. Then Alex Jensen, Utah alum, comes back to coach now at Utah. He was a Mavs assistant most recently. And then Luke Laux, who played at Florida State, was most recently a Kings assistant, comes back to Tallahassee to replace Leonard Hamilton. And now we get Jacque Vaughn doing it. Again, 15 years of NBA experience. He was an assistant with the Spurs and the Nets, interim head coach of the Nets, head coach, as you said, of both the Magic and Nets, and has 5 years of head coaching experience. Andy, this makes a ton of sense from that standpoint. We've seen this trend. Do you think it will stop here, or will we just continue to get all the copycat and parroting of this?
Yeah, it's going to continue to happen. And I think there's a handful of reasons why. I think one of the more notable ones that we've kind of touched on a little bit, but I think is a significant part of this is that player management is a critical part of coaching, particularly in the NBA. Like, you're managing egos, you're managing emotions, you're managing, professional athletes who are making literally millions of dollars to play basketball. And so your role.
So are these kids, by the way.
Well, exactly.
Oh, sorry, I stole your point.
No, that's perfect, because I think that's why you're starting to see this is the era of being kind of a really strict coach who kind of comes down on your players, or is very much like, I am the adult, I am the authority figure, I am the personality, and you are just a member of my team, and there's not anything wrong with that system. It's worked for a long time. It's kind of the system that even Danny Hurley kind of still utilizes, and other Calipari, Patino to an extent, but you have to be a little flexible in an era where players are now not only making millions of dollars, especially at a school like Kansas, but also they have more autonomy. Like, the players have more control and power in college basketball than they ever have historically. Obviously, we know that that's been a huge change in the sport, but it more mimics the NBA, where, NBA teams, you have to manage and massage egos all the time. It's part of the reason people didn't think Danny Hurley would succeed as the head coach of the Lakers, because how is his attitude and his antics, love him or hate him, how is that going to, doing that to LeBron's not going to work. I think that everybody kind of felt that and was wondering, how much is he going to be willing to adjust to do that? So if you're a coach like Bill Self, who is more traditionally, kind of the personality of his team and has, been a coach throughout most of the era, most of college basketball history, where it wasn't what it is the last 5 years, and you're going to transition, you want somebody who can come in, who's more comfortable managing egos, who's more comfortable with that kind of NBA temperament of I understand that, you're here, you're making this kind of money, you have your goals, and we want to work with you, as opposed to, I'm in charge, I'm the dictator, you listen to me. I'm not saying Bill Self's like that necessarily, but it makes sense that Kansas would be eyeing somebody who has experience dealing with what the future of college basketball is probably going to look like. Again, Kevin Young is not the reason that BYU spent $100 million on H.A. Dibanza. That might have happened either way. But he's probably going to be more equipped to handle having a player on his roster like that, because he coached Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and guys like that while he was with the Suns. Same with Jensen, same with Laux. I think that Vaughn, even if he doesn't ever take over for Self, which I do think will happen, but even if he's just on staff, the experience that he has managing those egos at the NBA level, I think will really help him, especially at a program like Kansas.
And here's what's cool about it too, Andy, is it's for those level players that do have the NBA aspirations, they can look to that part of his resume. But I think about a player that was at Kansas last year, like Zeke Mayo, who literally grew up in Lawrence, Kansas,
Yep.
and probably idolizes a player like Jacque Vaughn.
Mhm.
So even if it's not the NBA side, he can just point to his number 11 jersey hanging in the rafters and say, I'm a Kansas legend. So however you slice it, man, it just makes so much sense. Will it end up happening? As you said, we don't know, but I think you and I both like to think so. And also we should mention this comes on the heels of longtime assistant coach Norm Roberts, who just announced his retirement back on Cinco de Mayo, Andy, which for the longest time in my life, I didn't realize was just literally Spanish for the 5th of May. Cool. And so just shouts to Norm Roberts and the great job he's done there in his time in Lawrence. Really good stuff there, but slam dunk hire, whether he just always stays an assistant Jacque Vaughn or whether he does eventually ascend to being the head coach. Anything else on it before we move on?
Nope.
All right. Some other Big 12 coaches at opposite ends of their career have signed well-deserved contract extensions. For Kelvin Sampson, you got to figure it's the last one, right? We'll talk about that and more in just a second. Right after I tell you about Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered like, whoa, hang on here. Where did all my money go? Because between dining out and online shopping and entertainment, it's so easy to lose track of it all. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility of and control over all of your finances. Monarch Money, what's cool is that it's not just a budgeting app, although it is that. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, your investments, and all your spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and actually start building wealth. I also love that instead of having to juggle through a whole bunch of different apps, it's just one-stop shopping where you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan out long-term goals. I also love everything it does because my wife and I, one of the most important things to us is to make sure we're on the same page financially, and Monarch takes all the stress out of trying to do that. So join us and take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Andy, we stay in the Big 12, where both Houston and Texas Tech have respectively signed Kelvin Sampson and Grant McCasland to contract extensions, which just makes all the sense in the world. Out of respect to our elders, let's start with Kelvin Sampson. Andy, I'll just give you the brief overview and let you give your takes on it. This is a 4-year extension for Coach Sampson. We don't yet know the salary numbers on it, but this will take him through the end of the 28-29 season. Coach Sampson, Andy, is 69 right now. His birthday is October 5th. So this dude will be 70 years old when the season starts, meaning by the time this contract runs out, he'll be like 73 and a half years old. Andy, clearly this has to be the last contract of his coaching career, right?
I would think so. I mean, we've seen coaches coach longer than that. I mean, I think Coach L was 73 when he retired in the middle of last season. I think Leonard Hamilton was older than that. Pitino, but there's not many. Now, it's hard to argue with what Kelvin Sampson has been able to do. It's not like his performance has dropped off, and on the contrary, he's having some of the best success of his entire career. He has completely turned around a Houston program that I think it's very much worth reminding folks. Houston was very bad prior to Kelvin Sampson taking over. I mean, they had some history.
Putting it kindly.
Yeah, they hadn't made the tournament, and they've been one tournament appearance in the last 22 years before Sampson took over as the head coach. Like, now they've been a 1 seed in each of the last 3 seasons. Like, such an incredible amount of growth. 2 of those seasons coming while they were in the Big 12, not just earning those 1 seeds by virtue of playing a weaker conference
and winning the Big
America.
12, for crying out loud.
Yeah. I just, some unbelievable stuff from Sampson. I as much as we talk, there's been so much narrative, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, of like all these coaches who are leaving, Hamilton and Larinaga and Mike Bray and obviously Coach K and Roy and Bennett, and I mean, it goes on. But there are some older coaches still succeeding. Obviously, Pitino gets a ton of the attention kind of in that space, but we've seen it with Sampson is probably the next best example in that area of being a coach who's, again, going to be 70 when this season starts and having some of the best success, and he's doing it without having to change who he is. You know, he's a coach whose players love playing for him. He's tough. He expects a lot out of you. I mean, their teams are tough. They're physical. They're demanding. But he speaks very kindly about his opponents, and has always just kind of been the same guy that he's always been. And it doesn't look like he has felt the need to change or adapt his style to the modern era, which is why he's continuing to have success. Now, this Houston team in particular, heading into next year, has the best recruiting class they've ever had. They have multiple 5-star players coming in. Cenac and Harwell and Flemings are tremendous high school players. So for Sampson to be able to find a way to recruit high-level high school talent at his age when he hasn't, at a program that hasn't historically done that, is incredibly impressive. And so if I'm Houston, you break the bank, like do whatever you need to do to keep Sampson around. I think you feel very good about Kellen taking over the program whenever Coach Kelvin is ready to step away. But for right now, you're riding the wave. You're riding the gravy train, because this is going incredibly well, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. So if I'm a Houston fan, I am celebrating very happily about this, because you already know who your next coach is going to be. They're still on board. Everybody's good to go. The present and the future seem set up really well right now for the Cougs.
Yeah, Houston has literally the number one recruiting class in America. It's not Duke or Kentucky or Arkansas or anybody. It's the Houston Cougars. Mm-hmm. My word. Also, I feel like they probably don't have to even pay Kellen when he takes over, right? Just go ahead, and it's like prodigal son, like, let me get my inheritance now. And that's his paycheck, right? Isn't that how this should go? But Andy, legitimately, you mentioned that nugget that Houston had made the NCAA tournament once in the 22 seasons prior to Kelvin Sampson. That was in the 2009-10 season, where they were a 13 seed and lost in the first round. Since Kelvin Sampson has been there, they did not make the NCAA tournament in his first 3 seasons, which is a quick moment for me to say, yes, in this era, you can change things around more quickly than ever, but there is some level of patience still needed. Yep. But since then, Andy, in the 8 seasons since those first 3, Kelvin Sampson has made the NCAA tournament 7 of the 8 years, never worse than a 6 seed, and has been a top 5 seed each of the last 5 years and a 1 seed each of the last 3 years. This dude has this thing rolling, and as you said, it is showing no signs of not only not slowing down, but ramping up. Houston is going to be phenomenal again, and man, as you said, stay around as long as you want, dude, because you're incredible and we love you. And I hope Kellen just is able, when he does step in, is able to carry on every bit of his dad's success.
We got another coach in the Big 12, a little bit younger coach getting an extension, Grant McCasland over at Texas Tech. He is 48 years old as we're recording this. He will be 49 when the season starts this upcoming year. And Texas Tech is locking him up kind of for Sampson. They're giving him a legacy contract, like, hey, we want to keep you around until you're ready to go, basically. And we're, having your son in line. But for McCasland, Texas Tech is saying, we need you to stick around. Like, we don't want another Chris Beard situation. We don't want a coach to come in, flip this program around, have immediate success, and then bounce. And then we have to start all over. And that's happening at so many other programs. And it's so difficult. And I feel for the, especially mid-major programs that have like a lot of historic success where they can bring in good coaches and then those coaches keep bouncing to different programs. Texas Tech says, no, we want to make sure that we're going to lock McCasland down as long as we can. They got him on a 6-year deal through 2031, $31.5 million pre-bonuses, which if he continues to have success will elevate that contract even more. But there's also the buyout situation, which I think is where Texas Tech is really trying to make sure that they recoup some of their losses here. It's a 40% buyout of his remaining salary. However, that jumps to 60% if he leaves to be the head coach at another NCAA institution in the state of Texas. So if he were to bounce to Texas, like Beard did, or if he were to bounce to Baylor, anybody else, any other school in Texas, then
honestly, I hope it's like Rice or San Houston State.
UT San Antonio. I think if that's happening, it's probably because he's getting fired. But hey, you never know. Either way, totally love this move for Texas Tech. Grant McCasland's outstanding. He's an outstanding X's and O's coach. He's demonstrated the ability to retain high-level talent. Keeping JT Toppin after the NBA came calling is incredible. Kept Darion Williams for a second season after a great first year. Obviously, they've developed talent really well, even transfers, guys like Chance McMillan coming in and having immediate success. There's not a lot that Texas Tech is not doing well right now. And so I again, same with Houston, like ride the gravy train. This isn't a program that's historically had a ton of success. So when you get lightning in a bottle, you got to make it last as long as possible. And Texas Tech's doing the right thing here, giving Coach McCasland an incredibly well-deserved extension.
Again, the Big 12 just shoring up all these great coaches, man. That's part of what has made the Big 12 so good, is not only getting in big time recruits and big time portal guys, but also, man, this coaching just keeps it right there at the top. Love them wrapping him up. And man, please, Coach McCasland, stay in Lubbock for a long time.
Well, Isaac, Madison Square Garden hosting multiple big-time non-conference games next season. We've added some big-time matchups out of the West Coast as well. We got some non-conference scheduling to get to close out the show coming up here in just a second. All right, folks, closing out the show, continuing our conversation here, talking about some non-conference scheduling. We got updates on late last week. A couple West Coast ones before we get to the few games that are going on at Madison Square Garden, which, boy, if you can get to the Garden this year, there's going to be some great non-conference basketball played out there. But we'll talk about some West Coast games first. This one just came out an hour or so before we hit the record button here. As a reminder, recording on Thursday. So probably some more games came out over the weekend. We'll talk about those later in the week. But Gonzaga versus Creighton was reported by John Rothstein of CBS. The game will be in Spokane for this upcoming season on November 11th. The return game will be in Omaha next year. It's listed as a home and home, but Rothstein did report Spokane and Omaha as opposed to naming the actual arenas. So I am curious if this will be another thing where Gonzaga has a home game at the Spokane Arena, which is about a mile from campus, as opposed to on their actual campus, or if these two teams will actually be willing to play each other on campus. That's the big one. And then, of course, Isaac, we got the Arizona UCLA game, which we knew about. We knew this game was going to happen, but there is a slight change to the location of this game for a very specific reason. You want to talk to us about that?
Yes, I do. And also, Andy, we should say, in line with, hey, we're recording this early, over the weekend, we might have got more information on Gonzaga Creighton and the actual location of it. But yeah, man, this is really cool. So initially, this Arizona UCLA matchup was announced last year. We as a 3-game series over the course of 4 years. Last season, this upcoming season, a season off, and then playing again in fall of 2027. Andy, last year, the first game was at the Footprint Center in Phoenix. They're the home of the Suns, with UCLA winning that one 57-54. And originally, this year was supposed to be the more neutrally of the 3 games. They're all technically neutral, but the one that's not really close to home for either. This year, it was supposed to be in Las Vegas at T-Mobile Arena as part of the Hall of Fame series Las Vegas, and then the 27 game in the LA area. Because of Bill Walton deciding to, well, I shouldn't say it that way. That's a terrible way to say it. Because of Bill Walton's death, they have moved this year's game to LA area, to the Intuit Dome, where they will be able to honor Bill Walton and his legacy. Then that they're going to be able to do that this year in LA. That's why they've made this switch. Andy, I know it was last summer that he died, and then, we've already had a year of games since then, but I think this is just a good call. Anytime you can do things like this to honor people, it's a big time win.
Yeah, and it's a Pac-12 game. I mean, I know it's not, but it's a Pac-12 game. Arizona, UCLA, 2 of the most successful programs. I don't even know if the two most successful Pac-12 basketball programs from the old Pac-12 from a basketball perspective, squaring off in LA. It makes total sense for this game to be in honor of Bill Walton. November 14th is the date for this one. And again, I think the idea is honorable to kind of share the legacy of Walton and after his death and his so many contributions to college basketball. I also think that there is a motivation to continue to feature the Intuit Dome in these premier non-conference games as much as possible.
Because this is just the second college game there ever, right? Last year's was the first.
Last year's were the first, yeah, and there was a couple games.
Were there a couple there? Okay.
There was 2 the day that Gonzaga and UCLA played there.
That's right. That's right.
And then I think the other game was like Grand Canyon and maybe San Diego, somebody in the WCC. But I don't think there was any other games that were played there. And this game being November 14th is probably going to be the first college game of the season that's played there. So featuring, it's a very cool arena. It's very unique and new and fancy. And so I think it'll be fun to have this game, which will get a lot of attention, a lot of eyeballs, not just because of the opponents, but of course because of the Bill Walton of it all. So and I'm not saying that this is a bad thing that they want to feature the arena, but it certainly works kind of within the spectrum of also wanting to honor Walton somewhere that's not Las Vegas, which doesn't really have any connection to him. Instead, honor him in LA, where he played at UCLA, of course, and played with the Clippers in the NBA as well. So there's a ton of connections here. I love Bill. Long live Bill. I was so sad to not have him doing college games last year. And so having an opportunity to honor him and on what will be a really good game. Like you said, last year, this was a 3-point game between these two teams. I'm sure it'll be a rock fight once again. It always is with UCLA. So this should be a really, really fun basketball game between two really good teams next year. Arizona got a really great freshman class coming in. UCLA brings in Donovan Dent to a tremendous transfer portal class. So I'm so excited to see what these two teams look like.
And I mean, that said, I imagine Las Vegas Bill Walton would have been a lot of fun to. Can you imagine?
Yes.
Good grief. Anyway, that said, we don't have confirmation on this, but I expect this means we're just flip-flopping, and the 2027 matchup will end up being in Las Vegas, but we'll wait for confirmation on that. Andy, 2 games on December Saturdays that we need to mention at Madison Square Garden. On December 13th, we'll have St. John's versus Iona. Which obviously some Rick Pitino stuff there. Andy, I think after that, St. John's is going to scrimmage against Louisville and Kentucky and Providence, the Knicks, the Celtics, Panathinaikos, or however you say that. They're all going to come by MSG and scrimmage the Johnnies as well. Should be a lot of fun. Andy, and then the next Saturday, and this is the one that we should probably actually spend more time on, the aforementioned Grant McCasland and his Texas Tech Red Raiders against Duke. Holy smokes. That should be a fun matchup. JT Toppin sticking around. I'm geeked for that one already.
Yeah, that's going to be incredibly fun. And for the record, I saw this in the notes, all the teams that Pitino coached. And at first I didn't connect it. And I was like, why on earth would St. John's? Okay, I get it. I'm with you now. I love it.
Andy, I have to pre-plan my jokes because I'm not funny.
Yeah, not off the cuff with them. No. I would have been very impressed if you could have named every team Pitino coached off the cuff.
Now, to be fair, I did list that out off the top of my head.
You could have done it. You could have done it. Well, we can cut all this and we can just let people assume you knew it all.
No,
oh, man. Let's
transparency for the people, Andy. Full transparency.
Full transparency. That's right. We are people of the people. Let's talk Red Raiders, Blue Devils, because this game's going to be incredible. This is going to be so much fun. I love this matchup. I'm really excited to see Boozer versus Toppin in the front court. I'm excited to see what this Texas Tech team looks like, with a fair amount of changes to their roster, some guys out the door, but obviously keeping Toppin is huge. They got some just a lot of talent on this roster. And then, of course, Duke, you got the Boozer twins. You got now Sarr coming in. We'll see what that looks like. A really early, I mean, not super early. This will be late in the non-conference slate. Duke will have played some big games by then, but it'll be fun to see what that roster looks like coming together. I'm incredibly excited for this game. Again, we've kind of highlighted this already. That Saturday, the 20th, and then I think the 13th are the 2 Saturdays that are just jam-packed. There's going to be some great basketball those days. I know that St. John's Iona game on the 13th, Gonzaga UCLA is that same day. There's some other really big games. Those Saturdays in December are going to be a blast, and these 2 games are a big part of it.
Man, absolutely. Andy, I love more and more of these come rolling in. I just get more and more excited for what my schedule is going to do. Very quickly, an exhibition game we want to mention is Butler versus Notre Dame. That'll be in Hinkle on October 17th. Really cool stuff there. As a reminder, Micah Shrewsbury was an assistant at Butler under Brad Stevens. Really cool that they're going to now do that. And, I love that not only are we getting a whole bunch of home and homes in non-con play, Andy, we talked about this on Friday's show, is that we're now getting some home and homes in these exhibition games as well. So next year they will play up in South Bend as well after being in Hinkle this year. This is just cool for the state of Indiana, man. I love it so much. And it makes me just think of, we have like the Indy Classic or whatever, where they get a whole bunch of the Indiana colleges to play. Could we do something like that in the exhibition part of the season, almost like a jamboree kind of situation? That'd be super cool, man. Played at Gainbridge, played at Hinkle, whatever. I think that'd be rad.
I think if we're not going to get it, if things like that are going to go by the wayside as conferences get bigger and conference schedules get bigger, and we see teams be less willing to play some of those types of events, like I would love if they got moved to the exhibition. I'd rather they stay in the regular season. Like I think that's preferred. I think anybody would prefer that because the games count and you're going to have more eyeballs on it and whatnot. But if if teams in the Big Ten or the SEC or whatever are not wanting to schedule those things, then yeah, throw it in the non-conference, put something together. It's still going to get a lot of eyeballs. It's still going to bring people out. The majority of fans won't care that the game doesn't count in the standings. Like, they're still going to have a blast. I think that would be awesome. I would be 100% on board with something like that in the context of like the Indy Classic or like, Philly has their 5 teams and things like that. Like, it'd be really fun to see those types of things start to happen if they're not going to happen in the regular season.
That's right. Absolutely right. Andy, I think that's all we got for this Memorial Day episode of the show, folks. Thanks so much for being with us. As Andy said off the top, as we're recording this, it's Thursday. So anything massive that happened over the weekend, we have clearly not talked about today. And you're like, what are these dorks doing? Well, we'll get to it on tomorrow's show. We promise you that. We got to take a break every now and again ourselves. So thank you so much for being with us. If you've not subscribed to the show on video and audio, make sure you do that right now so you don't miss a second all off season, all summer long as you're traveling. Just let us be the soundtrack of your lives, as grating and awful as that maybe sounds to your wives or girlfriends or whomever. If you've not joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord, we'd love to see you in there, man. That link is in the show notes and it's absolutely free to join. Sienna teams, apologies to the Lawyer family. Shouts to Mick Bruins. Let's go Wild Popes. I said it out of order, Andy. Wow, that's crazy. And until tomorrow, when we will be back with you in more real time, we'll talk then. Peace.